How do you open this thing? Oh, hey. Oh boy, so by the time this video is finished and I upload it, it'll probably already be out of date, because that's what's fun about movie release schedules right now. Oh boy, so we thought we had the movie schedule for the summer kinda sorta in place, where theaters were gonna open probably in early to mid-July, and then you'd have the big movies of Tenet and Mulan come out at the tail end of July, and then we'd go from there. So that's not happening anymore, because states were reopening way too quickly with COVID happening, and so we're not even in a second spike, we're still in the middle of the first spike. It's just that people decided to stop social distancing, and you have some subsection of right-wing fucks who don't believe in wearing a mask in public, and it's kind of a hassle. So, I mean, for instance, in my state of North Carolina, the governor had to pause our reopening, so we're stuck at the phase 2 out of 4 until July 17th. Phase 3, which we have not started, is the movie theater opening phase. And masks are now mandatory statewide as of last night at 5 o'clock from when I'm recording this. So, and you know, Arizona's spiking, Texas is spiking, California's spiking, a lot of places in the south, the west, southwest, southeast. It's chaotic because people that were like, the economy's hurting, so obviously that means COVID went away, right? Just because I personally don't know someone who's infected, that must mean this is all overblown. Well, you know, and now all that's happening. So, that means that all the movie shit has been shifted a bit. So that's what I'm going to talk about here. So, last I checked, Cinemark Theaters, which is sort of a smaller large chain, I think bigger than National Amusements, but obviously smaller than AMC and Regal, they started reopening in June for their brick-and-mortar locations. We're not talking about drive-ins. Drive-ins have kind of stayed open where local municipalities and such will allow them. But Cinemark was starting to reopen, and they're just showing catalog titles, either movies that were released in theaters in 2020 before all the shutdowns, your Bloodshots, your The Hunts, Invisible Man, that kind of stuff, and then catalog titles that, you know, are popular. So, of catalog titles that I've seen that have been released at drive-ins and such, I've seen Jurassic Park, the Back to the Future trilogy, Jaws, anything that Steven Spielberg produced, basically anything that's a big popcorn flick that would normally be a type of summer movie if we had summer movies this summer. So they're doing that. And then the big chains, AMC and Regal, they were announcing their plans to open around early to mid-July. I've heard July 10th, July 17th, those kind of dates. I also have, because I used to be an associate manager at a Regal theater, I still have some friends who have contacts in Regal, so sometimes I hear some of the inside stuff. I know for my state, Regal wasn't thinking about opening until late July, probably just right before Tenet, or the original date for Tenet. Original date for Tenet, because Tenet's moved twice now. But the idea was that they would do like a soft open before these bigger movies were opening, just to test out new cleaning procedures and stuff. AMC had a bit of a kerfuffle where they weren't originally going to require masks inside. There was a big backlash because they said it was political, and it really shouldn't be political, but it is because the United States is fucked. So then they reversed course, and now I think almost every theater chain is making masks mandatory. And I'll talk specifically about Alamo Drafthouse in this video because that's the theater I go to. That's the theater I love going to, and they have released probably the most comprehensive list of what their steps are so far. But yeah, so now that a bunch of movie releases have been pushed back because of the spike in coronavirus cases, I'm not sure if the theater's soft reopenings are going to be pushed further back now, because they're pretty much all doing this for Tenet. To a slightly lesser extent, Mulan. They're not doing it for Unhinged or, well, Saint Maud was A24 had originally moved this to July 17th, so it was going to be one of the early movies to come out during the soft open period. But I don't think they've put a new date on this yet. But I assume they're not going to keep it open. The summer's not going to begin with Saint Maud. I don't think A24 is going to do that. So yeah. And in the meantime, of course, other movies that were slated for a theatrical release have been going to premium VOD. King of Staten Island, which I talked about in an earlier video, Jon Stewart's new movie, which the title I always keep forgetting because it's very generic. Irresistible, maybe? I don't know. Incorrigible. Paramount announced that the new SpongeBob movie is going to go direct to premium VOD and then stream on Peacock, which is Universal's thing. I think it's going to Peacock, isn't it? Or maybe it's going somewhere else, but it's VOD. Disney released their Artemis Fowl bomb that everyone hated to their streaming service. Obviously, Netflix had like Lovebirds; they got it, and obviously we've also gotten movies that are just releasing general VOD. I haven't seen some of these, but I've been interested to see them. The Wretched, a horror movie that's done some pretty bang-up business at drive-ins. That was in VOD. I think that was always planned to be VOD. It's just sort of reaped the benefits of it. Becky, the King of Queens, is a neo-Nazi movie. That's kind of like Home Alone, but with gore. I've heard mixed things about that. Swallow, I think, opened earlier in the year. I really wanted to see Swallow, and that's at that. But the thing is, if I pay $19.99 for a month of Alamo Season Pass, where I could potentially see one movie a day for 30 to 31 days, except in February, I can't justify spending that single amount of money on one single rental. So King of Staten Island, the Jon Stewart movie, a couple others that have gone for the premium $19.99, because right now it's just me. I'm not I'm not renting. I'm not spending $20 to rent a movie for 48 hours just for me to watch. I'm inviting people over with COVID happening, so you know. So some movies have been dumped there, especially kids movies. Scoob, obviously Trolls World Tour that Universal did. It's kind of funny. Theaters upset about Universal over that, but a lot of these movies that are catalog titles are Universal. A lot of these old Amblin Entertainment stuff from Steven Spielberg, like Your Jaws and all that stuff, are Universal films. Before Spielberg, went to DreamWorks, and then we'll just go to the highest bidder because no one wants to spend money on mid-budget films anymore. Like he had a hard time getting Lincoln bankrolled. Neither here nor there. So it remains to be seen if the theater chains are going to push their soft openings back a little bit further. And Alamo didn't actually give a specific date to theirs. They just said that they were going to do a pilot program with 2 of their theaters. I believe they have 41 theaters in the United States. And so they were going to take 2, and they were going to test run their new procedures to make sure they work well at 2 sites. And then at that point, they would do a gradual reopening of their various locations depending on the state-specific guidelines and what their rates were looking like. Being in North Carolina, which is spiking, mine might take a while. But let's just... I'm recording this on Saturday I don't even know what date it is. I'm losing track of everything. Saturday the 27th. And release dates were changing as early as late last night. My friend Andrew, who I used to work at the theater with, he usually pings me when he first hears about a date change, and I ping him back the same if we find out about this stuff. So I actually wrote the movie changes down. So again, there's a couple other smaller type movies that are waiting for a wider theatrical release. And I'm not including them because why? But as far as like the quote-unquote major movies, this is where it stands as of me recording this right now. Obviously, this could very much change. But Unhinged, the Russell Crowe road rage movie that the studio decided, because it's a new startup studio, this is the first movie from this particular studio, which name I'm already forgetting. Compass, maybe? I don't know. Horrible. I really should prepare more besides just writing down release dates. But they originally wanted to open it on July 4th weekend, but no theaters are open except, I guess, a couple Cinemarks, I guess. But they really want to make their small little Russell Crowe thriller their first out of the bat. I think being the first movie in theaters when normal brick-and-mortar theaters open is probably the best marketing they have for this very small thriller that would probably top out somewhere between 30 and 50 mil if it's successful before its video and streaming date. But they have set their release for July 31st. So barring anything else unforeseen, and there probably will be a lot unforeseen between now and July 31st, it's over a month away, that is going to be the first major studio quote-unquote movie, or at least the first wide release movie to be inside brick-and-mortar chain theaters. So we're looking at over a month for any new stopgap restrictions that are placed by states like Texas and North Carolina and Arizona to see if they can flatten the curve as opposed to explode at record highs as they're doing right now. And then the next movie after that, Tenet. Tenet originally moved back from July 17th, which was the date it was really trying to stick to July 31st. And then they were going to put the 10th anniversary re-release of Inception, because that needs to happen, as part of their test run on the original date, and now that's been shifted back. So that Inception 10th anniversary re-release, which is super necessary, is going to be July 31st, and Tenet is now going to open on August 12th. It would be very upsetting and also interesting if after all of this there is just no summer movie season and no movies are able to open this summer, but they're hoping for late July and mid-August now. And then that brings us to August 21st, which is very close to my birthday, where that's when Disney's going to try to release Mulan. The big thing with Mulan is that Disney wants Chinese theaters to be open, but China has recently reclosed their theaters. I believe this is the second time that they've reopened only to reclose them back down. I'm not sure if that's because of the entire nation state of China or if it's just individual cities or individual hotspots, because obviously China's as large, if not larger than the United States. I should look this up. I'm going to sound like Trump when I say that. As large or almost as large as the United States. So without that sweet Chinese moolah, Disney doesn't want to release Mulan, so they've pushed it back to the end. Also on that date, the time travel, maybe horror movie Antebellum. I believe it's either from Lionsgate or A24. It's one of those two that's releasing that. And I've heard it's kind of sort of similar to a book it's not officially an adaptation of. But the trailer looks interesting. They released like 3 or 4 very, very terse trailers that don't give away much, but I'm very interested to see that film. And then on August 28th, New Mutants. Yeah. Will we actually get to see New Mutants? I figure that movie's going to at least have like 7 more release dates. I thought when they pushed back Mulan that Disney, which bought out Fox, which means it owns New Mutants, was going to push that back even further to like the fall. I mean, if New Mutants is supposed to be this PG-13 X-Men spin on Dream Warriors, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, you'd think maybe just dump it in fucking October, because everything else is getting pushed back in tandem anyway. So, but it seems just right as of this moment when I'm recording this, it's still firm on August 28th. Also on that date, and this movie also might have kind of a overlap with the New Mutants audience, so I'm not sure releasing these on the same date is smart. But Bill and Ted 3, so Bill and Ted Face the Music, that's been pushed back a couple times because that was sort of meant for a July-August release anyway. They released a trailer. It seems like it could be cool. I was in, last year for my birthday, I was in New Orleans a couple weeks after they had finished filming Bill and Ted, because Bill and Ted filmed at least partially in New Orleans. So I didn't get to see them film or anything, but I know they did film some stuff in the business district of NOLA. And then we go into September, where Quiet Place 2 is set for September 4th. And we'll see if any of those stick at all. Of those films... Look, I'm addicted to going to the movies. I have not been to the movies since they shut down, which means the last movie I saw was Extraordinary at Alamo on Saturday, March 14th. So it's been over 3 months, and I'm pulling my hair out. That's why I'm bald. Not really. I've been bald for a while. But it's like a drug. It's like my church. Regardless of anything else, as soon as the theater's open, I am going to the theater. And that's kind of saying something since I have barely left my apartment in weeks. I'm working from home until after Labor Day, they've said, at the very least, so don't have to go into the office. I mostly, if I want takeout, I just DoorDash it or what have you. Occasionally I go out personally to grocery shop, but otherwise I can get groceries delivered too. It's just, with everything spiking right now and a lot of fucking right-wing libertarian assholes in my area who don't want to wear masks and shit, it's, yeah. So I'm a little nervous, but the movies I would still go when it reopens. So if Unhinged is the first movie, I'm gonna go see Unhinged, because why not? A disposable thriller's it's good fodder for the summer. Obviously I'm interested in Tenet. Not as interested in Mulan. I'm just not. But Bill and Ted, Antebellum, New Mutants, that's all stuff I'm interested in seeing. And also, because I go to Alamo is on the regular show's catalog titles, Terror Tuesdays and Weird Wednesdays and all that stuff. In fact, the one movie I got a ticket to on my season pass that ended up having to be canceled and refunded was a Wednesday screening of Frankenhooker. It was scheduled as a Weird Wednesday showing on the Wednesday of that week, and Alamo announced that it was closing their theaters temporarily on the Monday. So, so that's the kind of stuff that I like to see, as well as like newer movies, but I don't know. So, speaking of Alamo, they did announce what their reopening policies and procedures are going to be like, and they're definitely the most intensive, or at least the most detailed of any of the ones that I've read. So, masks are going to be required, except for when you're eating food or consuming beverages. Though they did say, so if you're not lucky enough to have an Alamo near you, it's sort of like a sit-down restaurant in a movie theater. So you have like a little table in front of you, or at least at mine, it's a little table like you're in high school. I know other Alamos have like actual like lengthy tables. But the idea is you wear your mask in the public spaces, or the lobbies and such. You sit down, you wear your mask for the movie, you take it off to eat and drink, put it back on when you're done eating and drinking. So basically, for the vast majority of the time you're there, mask up. Okay. Possible employees, definitely temperature checked. Customers, possibly temperature checked as needed. The infrared no-touch temperature. I believe they said they won't let you in if your temperature is 100.8 or higher. I believe that was the temperature they set. All ticket sales are going to be online, so through their app, or presumably third parties like Fandango and Atom Tickets. Does Atom Tickets still exist? Or Atom Tickets and things like that. Also, and this was sort of the biggie, all food orders will have to be placed online when you buy your ticket. I understand why this is the case, because if not, then you have to actually exchange physical money, or you have to hand your card to the person to pre-swipe, like they're opening a tab. So I understand just cutting down as much contact as possible between you and the employee. Now, generally for me, I don't always know if I'm going to get something at the theater until I'm actually there. So, like, I sit down and I'm like, yes, I am hungry enough to get the hot wings, or yes, I'd like to munch on some popcorn, or yes, I'd like one of your many beers that you have on tap. Because I want to say 50% of the time I go to the theater, maybe a little bit more, all I get is a free club soda, and the rest of the time I'll either get a drink or food or both. But I normally don't make that decision until I sit down, so now this will require me to make my decision at the point of purchase. They did not say anything about merchandise, though, because the lobby of my theater has a lot of different merch from different movies, and Mondo, which is the store that Alamo owns or is owned by the same parent company by. So I don't know if any and all merch will have to be pre-bought, or if they just won't be selling it. I assume they're going to be selling it, because they're probably going to want that sweet, sweet revenue after all this time. But they didn't mention anything like that. Also in the lobby of my theater is a video rental store. It's a Video Vortex. It's a free movie rental. You can rent DVDs and Blu-rays and VHS tapes. You can even rent a VCR. And I believe it's like $10 to rent the VCR, but everything else you want to rent is free. And you keep it for, I think, a week. And you can rent up to 2 movies at a time. So I don't know if they're going to keep the video store aspect of that suspended until all of this, because obviously that's a lot of changing hands and stuff. Also, I have a stack of movies I want to donate to them, so I don't know if they're going to take any donations for the time being, but I'll hold on to it. They're going to clean high traffic places, so like bathrooms and all that stuff, every 30 minutes. The seats in the tables in the auditoriums, apparently they have like an electrostatic fog cleaner thing that they're going to use, I guess. And they're going to do that between every show to do that. For social distancing, they're going to have anytime you book a seat, they're always going to leave 2 empty seats between each party that goes. So that's not exactly a percentage of what's filled. So you can't really say it's only 30 or 40 or 50%, because, there might be people like myself who only go with myself or maybe one other person, and then there are people who have like parties of 3 or parties of 4. So how many empty seats there are will probably largely depend on how large the parties are that go. So, it's, I guess it'll probably be in flux. I mean, about how many seats are actually filled at that point. And as well as, the auditoriums are all different sizes, of course. Trying to remember if there was anything else, major. They did say they provide disposable masks if you forget your mask. Part of me was kind of hoping they'd have cool Alamo branded masks, and I'd forget to get one. But at least the disposable masks they give you are going to be free. I believe AMC said they were going to charge $1. I'm not sure if Regal said one way or the other what they're going to do with that. But yeah, so I mean, they're fairly comprehensive. Oh, one of the other big ones that I haven't heard any other theater talk about. When people leave the theater, they're going to make people leave row by row, like you're at a wedding, or like you're at like church, like Catholic church. I was gonna say like an airplane, but when an airplane lands, it's fucking everyone jumps up and it's everyone for themselves. But they're going to unload the theater from like back to front or whatever. They did say that if you do want to sit and watch the credits, you can sit and wait till the end of the credits and then leave after that. But assuming you want to leave once the movie proper is over, they're going to do row by row dismissal, which understandable. That way there's no congestion at the exit, because that can happen. So that's good. My Alamo has a good thing where if there's like a mid-credit sequence or something, they just leave the house lights down until that sequence is over, so you know not to stand up. My Regal theater never did that. Or you couldn't really tell one way or the other if there was or not based on the lighting. And I'm not sure if AMC does it. I don't see a lot of stuff at AMC. So yeah, that was another big change as well. So, temperature checks, mask mandatory, seats between you, cleaning, row by row dismissal, buying your tickets and food stuffs ahead of time. All that kind of stuff that they're doing. So those policies, I'm all for all of those. I think given that an indoor seated anything is going to be a petri dish, that's about as much as you can do to make it safe. I mean, it's not the doing absolutely fucking nothing like the Trump Tulsa rally, but it's not as good as being outside and everything. And we know masks and being outside works because we had all of the BLM protests for George Floyd, and since most of the people protesting were, presumably of the left wing of the, left-leaning centrists, liberals, full-on leftists, these are people who generally, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of the anti-vaxxer and the Gwyneth Paltrow goop people would probably be considered socially liberal, but they're fucking idiots. But generally, left-leaning people believe in masks and social distancing and stuff, and obviously, if people are masks and they're outside, it's kind of shown that those things sort of work because the protests haven't shown to be hotspots in the way that other activities have, like going to bars and things like that. So, we'll see. I would not at all be surprised if any of the dates I've talked about get pushed back even further. At the end of the day, nothing's going to go back to quote-unquote normal until there's a vaccine. And people have the confidence that they're not going to get infected at all. But barring when that will happen, because that might not happen until the middle of next year at the earliest. I know they're fast-tracking stuff. There's a Vox special on Netflix about how many vaccines are already in stage 2. But barring anything unforeseen, it's going to be a little bit for that vaccine. Barring anything unvaccinated. So, the safety stuff is going to be up in the air. So, and we're not going to get to herd immunity before then. So it's not going to be safe enough to go into a lot of these places without. So, I don't know. I just want the movies to open. Like, I understand that. Like, as someone who is, like, fucking terrified to go grocery shopping or whatever, the movies always are a special carved-off part where it's like, if I'm going to get infected with a horrible thing that's going to scar my lungs forever, I'd rather be infected going to the movies, my favorite activity in the world, than buying drain cleaner at Target. So, so... what do you think is going to happen? Leave a comment below if you think this is the final timeline and the theaters are going to open mid-July regardless, or if shit's going to be pushed back as far as October or November. I don't know. Also, what have you been watching in quarantine? I'll tell you briefly. I'm not going to do full reviews of these. 7500 on Amazon Prime. I really liked that movie. It is super, super tense. It had my attention all the way through. You might have a slight problem that the terrorists in the movie are of the radical Islamic persuasion. A lot of these like plane hijack movies and terrorist movies, they've made them right-wing domestic terrorists because A, they're kind of a bigger deal right now, and B, to avoid anything possible like racism or stereotyping. Thinking movies like Source Code or Nonstop with Liam Neeson, they've done stuff like that. But I think this movie handles it well based on what happens as the story goes on. But I highly recommend. That's one of the best movies I've watched this year as far as just a white-knuckle, edge-of-your-seat thriller. It works great. Watched The Five Bloods, Spike Lee's new Netflix movie. I like that movie for the first hour and a half, where it's a very good movie, meditative, but still some humor about these Vietnam vets coming back to Vietnam, A, to find their fallen comrades' remains, and B, to find CIA gold that was never retrieved. First hour and a half of that movie, very, very good, solid, great film. Then there is a sequence involving landmines. I was still on board with that. And then after the landmine stuff, the movie seems like it wants to become like a Canon Films Rambo 2 type thing. Not as over the top as Rambo 2, but still way too complicated and action movie-y and in 80s cheese, and it doesn't work. And the movie is almost 2.5 hours, so a little more than half of the movie is good. About 60% of the movie is really solid, and then that last 40% is not so much. I'm trying to think, have I watched anything else? Well, I already did a review for 365 Days, so go check that out. I watched that. The Eurovision movie came out yesterday. I might watch that today. Otherwise, not so much. So, what else is going on? What else do you want to see a video on? I may or may not film another Dave's Faves video today or tomorrow and throw that up sometime in the week. Maybe, if I have time. Last time I did one of those, it was on fucking Escape from LA, and I talked for 40 minutes for some reason, because I can't shut the fuck up. This is already approaching 30. So, yeah. Have a good one. Go watch some movies. Try to live through this fucking hellscape. Couldn't hurt, right?